So this year's keynote, I'm going to read his full impressive bio to you because this guy has done a lot of things in his life. And yeah, you can do that to me all you want, but I'm holding the microphone so I get to do what I want. All right, Daniel Van Zandt. He's a disability rights attorney who has practiced most extensively in the areas of inclusive education, gender-based violence, and inclusive international development. He draws on his personal and professional experience with disability in leading the disability policy work at the Harkin Institute for Public Policy and Citizen Engagement. At the Harkin Institute, Daniel's disability policy work spans from work in rural Iowa cities to around the world. All of the disability work at the Harkin Institute is tied somehow to increasing access to competitive integrated employment for people with disabilities. From conducting focus groups in Iowa related to Medicaid services, to presenting at universities, providing consultation to corporations, and organizing the International Harkin Summit on Disability Employment, Daniel works on disability inclusion in many spheres. Prior to joining the Harkin Institute, Daniel worked as an attorney first at Legal Aid in Texas, representing survivors of sexual assault across much of the state and with a variety of legal issues. Then here in Iowa, he was a special education attorney at Disability Rights Iowa, where he represented students in special education, monitored facilities that housed youth in Iowa, and worked on other youth cases as well. He received his bachelor's degrees in international relations, rhetoric, and politics from Drake University, and earned his Juris Doctorate and a Master's of Science in Cultural Foundations of Education with a Certificate of Advanced Studies in Disability Studies from Syracuse University. How do you fit all that on a business card? What are the initials? That's the whole alphabet. That's it, okay, all right. Now I lost my place. When he's not working, Daniel enjoys traveling, learning languages, and tending to an excessive number of houseplants. Please welcome a dear friend of mine and somebody probably many of you have talked with at some point in your lives, Daniel Van Zandt.
I have to make sure I start my microphone and my timer because I'm also long-winded and don't want to keep you here. Lawyers bill by the minute, so it's an occupational hazard. I don't want to block the camera view of the interpreter because access is the most important thing we're going to do today. Before I get started with my formal remarks, I want to do some sort of stage setting, attitude setting here this morning. So who is really energized and excited to be here today? Okay, great. I love you people. You're the ones that are going to cheer, laugh, make my extroverted self go real easy this morning. Now, where are my people who are extremely exhausted but doing their best? It is possible to be both. But thank you. Those are my honest people. You're not going to laugh just because it's polite. I'll actually know it's funny if you're laughing. But that's real. Everybody should be tired because being disabled is exhausting. Being the family member of a disabled person is exhausting. You have balanced 800 things to be here early on a Saturday. Being tired is okay. It's why we have things like a quiet room at a conference. It's why we have coffee. I was telling someone any conference that has Oreos out at breakfast is hitting the exact right note that families need to be here, because I know, like I said, the 800 things that you've had to perfectly line up in time to try to get here on time. So it's okay to be tired. I think we tell ourselves it's not. There's this idea of being the tireless advocate. I'm not. I'm exhausted. I'm extremely tired. Do not get that twisted. But we keep moving forward. So I want to just take 30 seconds, 1 minute of sort of quiet, take some deep breaths. You've done a lot to get here today. Let's just center ourselves and be ready for the day's activity, right? Deep breaths. Everything's calm. You made it on time. Even if you didn't, who cares? You're here. Being late doesn't matter. Time is a construct. They put it on you to make you feel guilty for no reason, right? Yeah? Do we kind of feel our heart rate a little bit lower? We're good. we're like, where's this guy going? What is this about to be? Yeah? Okay. Emails are out of your head, phone's out of your head. Your kids are at daycare or they're next to you. Everything's great. Okay. Perfect. The other thing that gives us a chance to do is, I don't know if you could see it, but while we were doing that, you were actually being covered in this force field that's making this entire conference a pro-disability space. I don't know if maybe you could see it now, it's getting pretty big. But inside that bubble, the rules don't work the same as they do out there. In here, being disabled is great. All the things that you need to do to take care of your disability are good things, and they're things that you need to be doing and should be doing. So I want to take another 20, 30 seconds to have you rearrange this room or your seat to make you comfortable. If you came in late and want to be up close, come up here. There is no shame in moving. Tilt your chair. I know all of you are sitting like this. That's not comfortable. Who are you trying to pretend for? Shift your seat. You can move up here if you want to sit in the shadow or you want to sit in the light. Move. Yeah. Okay. I'm not joking. This is how much of our day is spent pretending that the things that bother us don't bother us? For what? So, move around, do those things. If you need to stand up. If you need to take off uncomfortable shoes, take them off. If your feet stink, move to the side of the room. But still do what you need to do. If you need to lie down on the floor, I don't care. Ask doesn't care. Do what you need to take care of yourself. Have snacks, have coffee, get up and go to the bathroom. Yeah? Flap your arms, make noises, nobody cares. Inside this bubble, you can do anything you want to be your real self, as long as you're not intentionally hurting another person. Okay? We got the rules? Okay. So I'm going to try to get up the rickety staircase here. Get my timing going. Okay, so now that we're all in this pro-disability space, think of it as a utopia. We're going to focus a lot this morning on how the good things of disability make our life really interesting and powerful. So we're in a disabled utopia. You could think of it as a dystopia, maybe? Well, never mind. I guess dystopia is already a word. It's what we call the space outside of this bubble right now. So I guess disabled utopia is what we'll stick with. Good morning, everybody. My name is Daniel Van Sant, and we'll say this officially starts my keynote, although I am running the time, so we're not going to go. Oh, well, I'm trying to, breaks are important, as I just said, so I won't make a hypocrite out of myself. But my name is Daniel Van Sant. I'm very excited to be your speaker today, and I'm grateful to have a disability. I like to say that I was blessed with a disability at birth because being disabled has presented me with incredible opportunities in my life that never would have been possible if I didn't have a disability. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. Now, have I always felt that way? No. Do I feel that way every minute of every day now? No. Some days, it's harder to be disabled than others, right? Some days people really test you. People make it really difficult. But in a world that bombards us with all this negative messaging about having a disability, coming up on a stage and saying that you're happy to have one and proud to have one is transgressive, right? It ruffles a lot of feathers when you say, yeah, that thing that you think I should be ashamed of, I actually really like it, and it makes my life better. That's a shocking thing to say, and it shouldn't be. And when I was invited to speak, and Karen and the staff told me that the theme was advocacy is everywhere, I just thought, what a completely true statement, because being disabled and being happy is advocacy. Being disabled and existing is advocacy. Every time your family goes out to dinner, that's advocacy. It shouldn't be. I know that can be frustrating, but it is. Just existing and living our lives is a form of advocacy. So advocacy really is everywhere. And refusing to be embarrassed or ashamed by the things that are not embarrassing or shameful is a really powerful form of advocacy that I'm going to encourage all of you to sort of take up today. And I think most of you know what I'm talking about. We have these experiences pretty often. You'll be at church, and there's some guy at the front, and the place is just going off, right? There's a talking snake, there's a burning bush giving people directions, people are getting turned into salt, everyone is kneeling and chanting and cheering, but your kid makes some kind of noise that they can't control, and you get hit with some of these. Right? You get the kind of stink look for nothing, for your kid just existing there at church. Or you call up the doctor's office to make an appointment, and you ask them if the examination table has a wheelchair lift or is height adjustable. It doesn't. And make that make sense, because the whole facility is meant to take care of sick people, but you cannot treat the people that need access to health care the most. That's just a regular occurrence for us. And this one, I think, is a scenario most people in this room are familiar with. When your kid's teacher, who spent their whole career learning how to be a teacher, never thought they would teach your kid, and that's a problem. These are kind of the daily fights that we have. And I want to be clear, I am not anti-church, I am not anti-doctor, I'm not anti-teacher, certainly, but I'm pro-disability. And the fact that we have to have these little fights and these sometimes big fights all the time is exhausting, and can tend to wear us down a little bit. And that's what I want to talk about today is your kids. And I see, I wasn't sure who'd be in the audience, if it'd be mostly families or if we'd have a lot of self-advocates with disabilities. I see a lot of young disabled people. That's great. I love having you here too. So I want to talk to both groups simultaneously, which can be tough, but I'll do the best that I can. So the reason I start off talking so positively is, like I said, you have very likely been bombarded by negative messages about your kid pretty constantly throughout their life. And I also want to be clear, I don't want to go into that sort of toxic positivity of everything with disability is great, because we know there are challenges. But you know what those are, you hear about them enough. Let's take today to think about some of the positive things. I want to talk to you today about how you can help your kids find pride in their disability, or if you have one yourself, find pride in your disability. To learn a little bit about disability history, disability culture, where we've come from, and how you can draw power from your disabled experience. I think that was really central for my development. I grew up in southwest Iowa in a town called Malvern. I don't know if there's anyone southwest Iowa. Okay, we got a few southwest Iowa people here. And of course there were other disabled kids in my school. I didn't necessarily identify that way at the time, but growing up and finding that community, learning about other disabled people's experiences, the history and the culture, really was a form of empowerment for me. And that's the message I want to share for you. So hopefully your kids don't have to wait till they're in their 20s to have those experiences and start a lot earlier than I did. So I was born with congenital bilateral hip dysplasia, which is a very technical long term for basically saying that I was born without hip sockets. So for those of you with kids, when they were very young, they did a hip check or a hip screening. That's so that they wouldn't turn out like me. I think I've done okay, but that's what that process is. For whatever reason, I slipped through those cracks. Oh. No, we're going to keep this up for still. We have a speaker dysfunction, maybe. Sorry, now I lost my place. So I was born without hip sockets. And for whatever reason, I fell through the cracks of that screening. It's not very common, especially in the United States, but such is my luck. I was extremely late to start walking, and the doctors gave my parents a deadline by which, if he's not up and walking by this date, we're going to have to do some extra tests, figure out if there's developmental delays, what's happening. And wouldn't you know it, right before that date, I started walking. Already at a young age, trying to fight the system, not go back to more doctor's appointments. My parents didn't really notice that anything was different until I was around 4 years old, and I did eventually go in for a surgery to try to, air quote, correct my disability. There was actually a problem with the surgery on my left leg, causing it to re-dislocate in a different location, giving me sort of the uneven walk and balance that I have today. And my parents just decided, enough. We're not going to do the other leg. We're not going to do any more of this. We've put him through enough. We're going to see what happens. And I'm really glad that they did. After that surgery, you know, the doctors with such confidence, it's like they have a crystal ball and can see everything that you'll never be able to do. It's really quite interesting how they're able to do that. It was this, maybe someday Daniel will walk again, but he's never going to go upstairs or have a normal life. And then later that summer, I walked up dozens of stairs at Mount Rushmore, and my parents just thought, well, okay, I guess he can do that. And again, I'm not anti-doctor, I'm pro-disability. And this is something that I've still had to challenge doctors on. A few years ago, I had a new orthopedist. Don't we love our first visits when we have to break a new one in? And they have no idea what's coming for them, and you're just sitting in that chair like, buckle up. So, you know, I go through the rigmarole, I'm drugged through the radiology, all these x-rays are taken, you know, they're twist here, stand here, you feel like a bop it. I don't know if we've got millennials in the room, but bop it, twist it, move here, put your leg over your shoulder, and it's like, I'm not a G.I. Joe. So I get all these x-rays taken, I go into the room, I'm waiting for this new doctor, you know, he comes in, flipping through, and stops and kind of looks around really confused, and I'm like, it's me, I'm your patient. And he was like, how did you get in here? And I was like, oh, I came in on the east side, went through the reception desk, they pointed me, and he's like, no, where's your wheelchair? I was like, I don't use a wheelchair. And he's like, well, that's not possible. And I was like, well, oh my God. Then I had no idea. But again, the confidence of, you look at one flash through my body and feel like you know exactly what's going on. I don't even know what's going on, and I live in the thing. And so this is where we can hit the next slide. He was shocked when I told him that just a couple years before I had hiked up Mount Fuji. So there should be a picture.
It's working.
Okay, the slides are working. Anyway, so I did climb up Mount Fuji at one point in my life. I don't know that I could do that again. That was a one and done thing. This is the apex of my physical accomplishments. But I was just like, oh, that's funny, because for someone who shouldn't be able to do these things, I did that. And then my care took a whole different direction at that point when you find out that I'm not going to take any of your ignorance. So I was really blessed to be raised by parents that didn't take all of those can'ts and will nevers at face value, right? And I know my experience is probably different from all of your kids. All of our experience is different. But once I started walking up Mount Rushmore, it was like, okay, well, everything we've been told has just gone out the window, so we're just going to let this kid see what he can do. And that's probably a story that's familiar to a lot of you. Again, I don't think I could do this again, but at one point, I was capable of that. So I had the absolute privilege of having parents that let me forge my own path and didn't put limits on me based on what other people said I couldn't do, wouldn't be able to do. So we're going to put all those negative things aside, remember the positive today. I also have the extreme privilege of being born just before the Americans with Disabilities Act was put into place. The title slide said 32 years. July will be 33. So think about things that are 32, 33 years old. Not a lot, right? In terms of having civil rights, that's nothing. It's barely within my lifetime because I'm 34. I'm not going to ask people in the room how old you are. Don't worry. I'm not going to do anything like that. But think about how little time has passed since we've had the ADA. And so the pre-ADA world was a completely different place. And it's not that the ADA has solved all these problems. I don't have to tell that to anybody in this room. We know that there are still issues and that it has not been fully enforced. But they use the ADA in disability world to sort of break up generations of disabled people. And me and everybody my age and younger is called part of the ADA generation, meaning that we are the disabled people who never had to live in a world without the protections of the ADA. And that is a pretty big privilege. We're going to talk a little bit in terms of the history of where other people had to come from to make that space for us. But again, not knowing totally who's in the audience, my assumption is most of your children or yourselves are part of that generation too. So that's the perspective that I want to bring to you today. And a lot of the critique that we get as the ADA generation is we're entitled, we're proud, we take things for granted, we just expect all of these things. Yeah, you're right. We are entitled. That's what civil rights laws do. They give us entitlements that we didn't have previously. So I don't take that as a bad thing. And we are proud because we have these protections. We had to fight for them. There's a history of us needing to be proud in our identity because when we weren't and we didn't have that, it was taken away. We were living in institutions. We weren't able to go to public schools. We weren't getting the things that we need. People fought extremely hard and put their lives on the line so that I could grow up with those things, so that your kids and all of us could have those things now. And we are proud and we are entitled. The thing that I really always want to push back on is there's still this mentality of you should be grateful that we're doing these things for you. Well, we put in a push button for you. You should say thank you. No, and I said I wouldn't swear. I was going to say, heck no. I'm not going to say thank you for that. Well, we're letting your child into this class. No, you are not letting us into the classroom. This is our public school district, and we are entitled to be here. They still act 3 decades later like they're doing us some big charitable favor by allowing us to exist a public life. No, that's the entitlement that I'm telling you to pick up today and run with if you don't already have it. These are not nice things that they do for us. These are the laws. You are required to do these things. So next time someone asks you to be grateful, make sure to give them a little bit of education. We don't thank people for not causing car accidents. We don't thank people for not murdering us. You follow the law, you don't get thanked. That's your job. That's what's expected of you. So yeah, my generation is a little bit entitled, and personally, I encourage us to stay that way. I'll hit the next slide. I can't, watch me fall off this stage right now. Okay, so like I said, we are entitled because generations of disabled people before us fought really, really hard for us to have the things that we have today. So you'll have some historical pictures here up on the projection screens. You should see people, I guess I can also audio describe because assuming everyone sees things visually is ignorant. But there are images here of people in wheelchairs or with other disabilities chaining themselves to public buses, to blocking lanes of city traffic, real aggressive, transgressive stuff. Right? Chaining yourself to a bus because they won't allow you to be on it. That's where we started. There was no public transportation. Forget the bus lift that only works 70% of the times on a lucky day if it's not raining and they've shoveled the snow away from the bus stop and you can get there on time because you have to do everything else and go pick up your prescription. I'll stop that. You know where I'm going. This is where we started. We said, we'd like to take a city bus, and they said, Who? You people? Where do you have to go? So eventually we had to chain ourselves to buses so that they couldn't go anywhere either. Next slide. Double check the, yeah. We also had to literally crawl up the steps of our nation's capital. This is called, I think the picture on your left is the Capitol crawl. So when there were debates about whether or not Section 504 and the ADA and all of these laws would be passed, people with disabilities wanted to go to the Capitol to talk to their elected representatives, something that we're told is easy to do in democracy. Unless your Capitol building is inaccessible and they don't have interpreters and they don't have those things, then you can't speak with your representative because you can't even get to them. So again, we didn't let that stop us, and I use the royal we, I was not there. People came out of their chairs, dropped their crutches, and crawled, if they could, up the steps of the nation's capital so that the media could not ignore us, that the politicians could not ignore us, and they put themselves at risk. That's a dangerous thing. I almost busted it going up 3 steps here on this stage. Can you imagine crawling up the Capitol steps demanding that people take us seriously? But it worked. You'll see an image down at the bottom right corner here. This is from the 504 sit-in, which I'll talk about a little bit more in just a second, but is a huge piece of American civil rights history. And how many people here have heard of the 504 sit-in before? Okay, good. We've got a handful of people, and after today, all of you can put your hands up. They don't teach our history in schools, so we have to teach it to ourselves. Next slide. This history of occupying spaces and taking up space and fighting for what's ours still happens today. These pictures are from 2017 at our nation's capital, again in Washington, D.C., around debates around healthcare access. So even now, this history is still happening, these methods are still in place. But if you haven't thought about disabled people as a civil rights movement, as people who protested and did these things, you're missing a huge part of our history and your children's history to know where we came from. And personally, I take a lot of pride in this, that people did these things. Let me do the next slide when I go. Yeah. So I mentioned the 504 sit-in. This is actually the longest nonviolent occupation of a federal building in U.S. history. 26 days, people with disabilities in San Francisco occupied a federal building, nonviolently, and we never hear about this. The longest occupation, the longest protest of its type. Imagine being somewhere for 26 days and not leaving. Imagine the things that you need every day, all of your medications, all of your trachs and vents and levies and everything that you need. Imagine not having those things for 26 days or having people pass them to you piecemeal through door frames and through windows, because that's what people did. And they didn't leave, and they made the police uncomfortable, and they made elected officials uncomfortable, but they got Section 504 signed. And what I really love about this story is that when you learn more about this history, you find that the disabled protesters used their disabilities to their advantage in these sit-ins. So again, we're always told, oh, these poor people, they can't walk, they can't hear, they can't read, they can't do all these things. But there's a hell of a lot that we can do that non-disabled people don't think about. So like I said, in these protests, people were chaining 300-pound motorized wheelchairs together. That's very difficult to move. You rip the battery pack out of that thing and lock the wheels, take me to jail. Lift me in my chair. Go ahead. Your cell's not accessible, so I don't know where you're going to put me. But that's a power that non-disabled people don't have. At one point during these 26 days, the police actually cut the phone lines to the federal building so that people would stop making phone calls out to get food, to get medications, to do these things. And what did disabled people do? They said, oh, you forgot about sign language. We don't need telephones. We've been living without telephones. And so we had interpreters. They had interpreters there. I keep picturing myself. And we were able to pass messages through sign language. So they had people out on the street and people in the window using sign language to communicate needs back and forth. We said, take your phones. You invented those. We never said we needed them. We don't need you. We don't need your phone lines. And we still got things through. There was also a tremendous piece of this history at the intersectionality of disability. The Black Panthers showed up to provide meal service. Of course, there were also Black disabled people protesting at the time, and we can't ignore that. Jefferson Starship showed up at one point, playing protest songs and entertaining people. It's a whole scene that we don't hear about. And why is that? Why don't they want us remembering that we have the power to shut down lanes of traffic? Why don't they want us remembering that we have the power to completely overtake federal buildings? Why don't they want us to remember where we come from? I'm getting all heated up here. The other reason that our generation is so proud and so cocky and not putting up with exclusion anymore is because we have decades of data to draw on now to show that we actually improve society for non-disabled people too. So this brings me to a section of the presentation with the next slide that I call No More Thank Yous, You're Welcome. And I want you to practice saying that. No more thank yous. You're welcome. Okay, I'm going to take the show on the road a little bit, again, making sure I don't lose my interpreter, our interpreter, I apologize. If you want to hit the next slide. So everybody in this room knows the benefits of inclusive education for disabled children, right? Inclusive education provides all of these academic and social benefits, higher achievement in language and mathematics, improved rates of high school graduation, more positive relationships with non-disabled students, and importantly, including students with disabilities in regular education classes does not harm non-disabled students and may actually confer academic and social benefits to them as well. You're welcome. Next slide. A study from the University of Manchester reviewed 26 studies of the effects of inclusive education on non-disabled students. I have to read from this side. The vast majority of these studies indicated that non-disabled students experienced, at worst, no effect, a neutral effect to inclusive education, and at best, positive effects on their education by being in inclusive classrooms. Is that the message that you hear today? Is that what your schools and everybody tells you? Because that's what the studies show. Inclusive schools increase support of inclusive practices and promote friendships between disabled and non-disabled people. It lets you know that we're here. It makes non-disabled people question, why don't I have disabled coworkers? Why don't I have disabled clients? Where are they when you were educated and brought up with your disabled peers? Next slide, please. These are some of the benefits for non-disabled children in inclusive education. Let's start this off with another you're welcome. Okay, come on. This I'm going to ask for. You're welcome. Thank you. Reduced fear of human differences because there's an increased comfort and awareness of people that are not like you. That benefits everybody. Growth in social cognition. So increased tolerance and effective communication. Improvements of self-concept. Students without disabilities show greater self-esteem, perceived status, sense of belonging by understanding the group in which they belong that's inclusive. Higher development of personal and moral and ethical principles by being able to respond to the needs of students that are different from them. These are all benefits that non-disabled students get from being educated with us. We give you this. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Oh, now I feel like I'm really leading like a cult leader up here. Warm and caring friendships. We got that. Next slide, please. The disabled population is huge, and do not let them take that away from you. Around 1.85 billion people around the world have a disability. This is about 20% of the world population. In the US, we are the largest minority group, and as I mentioned, we intersect with everything. Nobody is just a disability in a vacuum. You have your race, gender, sexuality, all of these things tied up into it. But we are the largest and most diverse minority in the United States, and a massive global population as well. So don't forget that there are strengths in numbers. There's 1.85 billion people around the world that are experiencing what we experience and having these experiences. This is the size of China plus the European Union together. I do a lot of presentations to corporations to try to either tell them how they can be inclusive or convince them. We do carrot or stick depending on what I'm being paid that day. Sometimes stick, sometimes carrots. But when we tell people, do you want to sell products to China? Yes. Do you like to sell products to the European Union? Yes. What if I told you there was a market as big as both of those, and they had the combined spending power of $13 trillion? Is that something you might be interested in reaching? Well, guess what? You need to be inclusive. It's a huge market with a lot of power in numbers and financial resources. It doesn't always feel that way to us on the day-to-day, but we're all in this together. Next slide, please. And again, studies have shown that businesses who are inclusive, of people with disabilities actually perform better. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
So on average, companies that are inclusive of people with disabilities are twice as likely to have larger shareholder returns than their peers, 28% higher revenue, and 30% higher profit margins. There we go. Ooh, we're bringing other languages out here too. I love it, I love where this is going. The stakes have been raised, just like the profit margins of accessible companies. So when companies tell you, well, we can't put a ramp in front of our door, that's too expensive. I'm sorry, do you not want $13 trillion to be able to come into your store? Oh, we can't make our website accessible, that's too expensive. Oh, well, do you not want customers? I'm sorry, I thought this was a business. You perform better and you're missing a huge market share if you're not included. So have these things in mind next time you hear these naysayers, these negative people. The reason these companies perform better is because, we all know this, being disabled makes you so creative and innovative. When you are living in a world that is not designed for you, that doesn't consider you, you are innately a problem solver, and you are coming up with unique ways to do things. So if I could have the next slide. If you are able to, I would like everyone to put a hand up in the air. If that's not something you can do, stomp a foot, make a noise, do something that you feel comfortable being polled in a survey here. Okay. So I want you to put your hand down. No, keep them up, people. I'm sorry, it's one of those. So you can put your hand down. If you hit the next slide. If you have listened to an audiobook at some point this week. So your hand is up. If you've listened to an audiobook, you put your hand down. If you have not listened to an audiobook in the last week, your hand is still up in the air. Okay? We lost a few people. Excellent. A lot of commuters. This is Iowa. We drive long distances here. Next, please. If you brushed your teeth with an electric toothbrush today, put your arm down. Okay? I'm hoping the rest of you still brushed your teeth. We just use manual to, I mean, I'm not going to pry, but okay. We, we still have some hands in the air. Next one. If you have used a speech to text to send a message, write a Facebook post, or an email, I'm also going to count if you've done a Alexa, hey Siri, Google, what's the weather tomorrow? If you've done one of those, hands go down. Okay? Hit the next one. If any of you have used a keyboard on your phone, on a computer, whether it's digital or physical, if you've used a keyboard, I'll say some of you have probably used it while I've been talking. Don't lie. There's some text messages going out. If you have used a keyboard in the last 24 hours, hands down. Okay, so I think that's everybody. Well, I have 4 more up there, but we don't have. We can go through if you put the next 4 up. So we've got grips for different kitchen tools, curb cuts, fidget spinners, bendy straws. You can probably guess where I'm going for with this. All of these are inventions that came out of disability. But they are things that non-disabled people use all the time. Cruise control on cars. They use these things all the time and don't know that they're using assistive technology, don't know that they're using adaptive technology, don't know that that came from us. So we say to them, right, next time we use these things, remember to tell a non-disabled person, you're welcome. Doi itashimashita. We've got some Japanese, we've got German, we've got all kinds of things up here. Time is dwindling down. So, take these pieces of disability history and disability pride for your future here, for your kids. Let them know that these things come from us and they need to be proud of it. Let me do the next slide. Okay, there's a picture of me back on Mount Fuji. In case y'all forgot, I want to let people know I climbed that thing. It's like, remember, as I'm winded getting on the stage, it's like at one point, guys, at one point. No, so I mentioned that, of course, Mount Fuji is in Japan, as Karen mentioned in my bio, that I'm regretting drafting that way, because I hate sitting there and having people read the whole thing. I've had the honor and the privilege to be able to go all over the world. Japan is just one of the countries that my disabled little dislocated legs have taken me. And something that I've seen in a variety of countries all over the world is that disability culture is something that transcends language, race, creed, religion. There's an immediate understanding when you meet another disabled person, whether it's in your own community or on the other side of the planet. And again, this is something that I don't think really clicked for me until I was well into my 20s. And Lord knows I went to my share of, the inclusive summer camps. I was in occupational therapy for 13 years with other disabled kids, and it never quite clicked when I was younger. But then when I was in law school, I applied for a fellowship program for, young disabled professionals in international affairs and joined this cohort. And excuse me, and it was a cross-disability cohort. We had people who were chair users, blind, deaf, psychosocial disabilities, all different parts of the country, different races, different backgrounds, different states. And we lived together for a summer in dorm rooms in Washington, D.C., a muggy, hot summer, for those of you who know that experience. And we were just constantly surprised at how many experiences we shared with completely different disabilities and completely different backgrounds. I think at one point over drinks, we were all sharing stories that every single one of us had been stopped at the street on one point to have someone pray over us. And I don't know if that's still happening, but that's a shared experience that disabled people have, is we'll just be out minding our business. I was coming out of a Dunkin' Donuts once in my post-Mount Fuji days. And some person was just like, can I stop and pray for you? And I was like, the what now? And he's like, well, I assume you're on your way to the hospital. Can I pray for your surgery? And I was like, you're about to be on the way to the hospital if you don't watch how you're talking. But that was something that everyone else in this group had experienced, that someone had the audacity to come up to us and just say, can I channel the power of Christ to heal you? And as a pro tip, when you flip it back on those people and say, sir, indicating that our Lord and God could make mistakes is blasphemy, they don't know what to do with it, in case that's still happening to people. But there's these types of experiences, the snide look in church, we're not sure that this classroom is the best place for your kid. Those experiences, unfortunately, exist all over our planet. And there is a connection between disabled people that we share by experiencing that I think is really powerful. I was talking to one of our guests here last night at the reception who put this in a much better quote than I could, that I guess came from Judy Heumann, who was instrumental in all of the historical pieces that we showed there. And what we fought for was inclusion. That's vital. No one is going to tell you that inclusion is bad, but don't let your kids forget that they're also disabled, and that's okay. And they can be with kids like them. They can be with adults like them. They should learn from us, know the ropes. So for all the non-disabled parents, you can also have your students learn those things from us. We've been there. We know how to do those things. Keep them tied to our culture. One story that I really like to share on this disability culture piece is I was in Vietnam a number of years ago now doing some work on disability, and I went to an institution out in the countryside, and at least there at that time, any type of disability, that's where you got put. There was this countryside institution, and I'm not passing any judgment on other countries. I don't know all the situation that has caused the country to come up with that solution, but that's where I was. So I'm there with this group of Americans, and we go into this institution. Different people want to do different things. I know a little bit of sign language just because of the work that I do, so I'm chatting with some of our deaf participants, and a group of deaf Vietnamese boys come running over to us, and they're so excited to see sign language going on, and they are quickly able to figure out who is actually deaf and who is hearing but can communicate. And so the deaf participants all get drug off somewhere, and then there's a group of these deaf boys that are still latched onto me, and they want to take me on this tour. And I guess as a linguistic note, it seems like we have some language nerds here. American Sign Language is derived from French Sign Language, and because Vietnam was occupied by France, their sign language has the same sort of grammatical roots. I'll take my TED Talk hat off. So some basic signs in that grammar work. So we're able to at least communicate concepts with each other. They take me around the facility, they're giving me this tour, they're telling me about their experiences, and at some point, I don't understand something they say, right? This, as expected. And so I say like, oh, I'm sorry, my signing's bad. I don't understand what you're signing. And they are repeating something, and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm looking, and they're like, no, it's not a problem. You are this, you understand. And I was like, this, I don't, like, what's this? And they kind of like talk to each other, and then they just like look at me, and they gesture down to my legs and say, you are this, you understand us. And I just had this moment of these deaf teenagers in an institution in Vietnam saw something in me that they knew they could identify with. And that moment hit me. I get kind of emotional talking, but it hit me like a truck that here I was in law school at the time, had all these opportunities in the United States, and these people on the other side of the planet, separated by culture, language, about everything possible could separate us. We had this thread, this piece of our culture that connected us across all of that we recognized in each other. And that is the power of taking pride in your identity as a disabled person and not letting that go. I see that I'm running a little bit low on time. I know there's a break for questions, but I always want to leave time for a little bit of questions. So the point is, keep these pieces of disability history and culture in mind for yourself if you have a disability, or your child if that's who you're here with. If we could have the next slide. I've assigned homework because this is a education conference. These are a collection of books that I would recommend for your next steps if you haven't read them. There are young adult versions of both Being Human and Disability Visibility, so the YA versions are up there as well. Everybody should watch the documentary Crip Camp on Netflix if you haven't seen it. For parents of younger kids, that might be one where you want to watch it first, figure out what pieces, because it's the real history and it's not always comfortable to watch depending on your kid. For the parents of really young kids, I've got All the Way to the Top and Sam's Super Seats up there as children's books. All the Way to the Top is about the Capitol Crawl from a child's perspective who was there. She grew up to read the book. Sam's Super Seats is a fairly new read and is really good intro to some disability culture pieces. So you didn't know we were going to get assigned homework, but here we go. And that is because, as we started this off with, advocacy is everywhere, and you need tools. That's why you're engaged with Ask, because you get tools, right? You get support. You have this group with you. This is just another set to have in your toolbox. Living every day of our lives as disabled people in a world that was not made for us, in a world that ignores us at best, and at worst, actively tries to harm us, is an act of advocacy. But we're here. There are billions of us. We have always been here. We will always be here. Our people chained themselves to public buses, used power wheelchairs to shut down traffic, used sign language to outsmart authorities, dragged themselves up marble steps so that the media couldn't ignore us. My generation of disabled people inherited this post-ADA world, and we are taking what's ours. Our hope is that your children will have it even easier than we have had. But of course, as everyone in this room already knows, they will still have to fight. You wouldn't be here if they weren't still fighting. Trust me when I tell you that that fight will be easier for your children when they know that they are part of this culture, when they know that they're part of this lineage, when they can draw pride from these things the next time someone tries to tell them that they're worse for having a disability. Your kids' lives will be better for knowing these things. No need to thank me. You're welcome. So I may have 30 seconds for questions. Okay. Are there any questions? Okay, there's going to be a hand mic that will come to you.
Hi there. Great to be here. We in Iowa are facing challenging times with public education, and having a son with a disability and being in education and facing some challenges in this last year. Just quite honestly, I'm extremely, extremely alarmed, and that's why my husband and I are here. Do you have some guidance or some words to guide all of us Iowans in the room who are in public education, and we need some help?
Ooh, that is a tough, that's a heavy charge. Yeah, I think these things are terrifying. The things that could happen to, especially rural special education, I think is really concerning. These are my personal opinions, by the way. Our institute is nonpartisan, so don't ever misread that. I think in terms of what can people do together, I mean, part of it is coming to a conference like this, knowing that you're not the only people, getting these tips for advocacy. I don't know who all is downstairs in the resource booth, But there are organizations that you can go to for legal assistance, whether that's Disability Rights Iowa, where I used to work. They have incredible attorneys and advocates there to help with a variety of issues, whether that is the other organizations down there. Legal Aid is another organization that has attorneys. So if that's the route you have to take, there are those resources. I mean, I don't know that I have a good answer for how do the people overcome what seems to be the governmental will, other than we have to be heard. You have to think about these things. Right? My job is not to tell people how to vote. I care, but I can't tell you what to do. Your lives are all different. But we have to think about these issues and how they're going to affect us when those times come, and to be vocal. Because what we hear is, oh, these types of things are going to be so good for students that need differentiated instruction, for students that need other things. It's possible that that's true. I struggle to say that, but I don't have that crystal ball. I'm not the world's foremost expert in everything. There is a universe where that's a true thing. There is also a universe where that's not true. And either way that goes, stay active, stay engaged, let those stories be heard. This policy changed, this is what we thought would happen, this is what actually happened. And what did we learn from that? Are we going to let this continue? And that applies not just for education, but all kinds of things. It's okay as a government to try something, have it fail, learn from that, and go in a different direction. We try new things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So I don't know if that's, I wish I had the silver bullet, because I would have pulled that trigger a couple months ago. But up here, that's the best I can come up with. They're going to wear you down. Try really hard not to let them do that. And I think that's what these types of groups are for. Some other questions? And I guess there's a break after this that I am happy to hang out with people. Like I said, I don't want to go into your break. That's the important time for medications and bathrooms and Oreos. Yes?
Hi, how do we bridge the gap between medical care and mental health care? Because they are so disconnected right now. Our child needs mental health care very, very desperately, and we're having trouble finding the correct resources. So we resort to medical care, and they say, well, you're not in the right spot. But there is no mental health care for him right now. He is autistic and intellectually disabled, if that matters.
So the question is, how do we bridge medical care and mental health care? Gosh, you guys have the tough questions up here. I was like, oh yeah, the buses were this heavy. No. Also, oh, good. We have I was going to say, there's other ways to engage with us, which hopefully gets to these questions, because I was going to say one of the projects that we're working on, I'm excited to have the Medicaid director here today, because we're working with them on a Medicaid project that is geared partly toward that issue of mental health care is not being provided well in our state. It's not being provided in the ways that it needs to be provided. In terms of how you bridge that with medical care, I don't want to drift too far out of my expertise of, I'm not a medical expert, I'm not a mental health professional, but we have to make sure that these providers are actually accessible to people. And if that's telehealth, we have to make sure that people have internet. Too much of our state does not have high-speed internet for us to say, we'll just hop on Zoom and talk to somebody in Iowa City. That's not a solution. I think something that would help is to look at licensing of professionals. That's not to decrease the licensing requirements, but there are incredible professionals from other states that if they wanted to come here and provide services, have to go through all the license requirements, even though they've been working for decades in another state. That could help loosen up a little bit of the crunch. I think some sort of itinerant mental health service so that so that the families don't have to travel, that the professionals can travel, would be a really good solution. And then it's also about reimbursement rates from insurance, Medicaid, things like that as well, to make sure that these providers actually want to take those services on and be fairly paid for their services as well. So again, I don't know if that is the solution, but under the spotlight here, some ideas for how we might be able to go forward on something like that.
Thank you, Daniel, very much for your keynote presentation today, everybody.